Staten Island, Pennsylvania German, and he went to Brazil during the World War to be the liaison between the Brazilian and the American navies because he could speak languages so well.
Oh, wow.
And there he met my mother, who was 18 years his junior, and they married. So I'm half Brazilian and half American. I have passports from both countries. And while still in the womb, I traveled to America to be born, traveling across the equator. And that traveling became a part of my life. I was like wired to travel. And so for the first 32 years of my life, I was constantly moving, hitchhiking, traveling, third class in a hammock, going up the river, Amazon, bumming around Europe. And then when I arrived in Davenport, I stopped. And this was like, oh, I landed here. And it was an odd thing because I had grown up on the ocean, body surfing. I didn't go to school until the second grade. And then I grew up in the mountains of Colorado. And when I came to Davenport, it was like a river, please. You know? But then the river just entered into my life, and it just became part of my art and my spirit. And now my hometown is Davenport.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, how did you initially get here?
And I came here. I went to grade school in South Bend, Indiana. My dad was teaching there. And then I went to a boarding school in New Hampshire, 400 boys. And then I came back to South Bend to go to college there. And then I traveled in South America. And then I came back and I ended up in Iowa City in grad school in art, in printmaking, making etchings. And then I came to Davenport because I got a job here teaching at Marycrest College. Little Marycrest College, sweet little school. And then when that ended, I stayed in Davenport. I had a house. I liked it. And I felt that I had to prove myself somehow. So I stayed here. Otherwise, I would have gone to some cooler place. But as it turned out, Davenport was cool enough. And
I gotta applaud that. That's wonderful.
No,
That's really
no.
nice.
And the amount of frustration here is small. The amount of stimulation, you have to kind of self-stimulate. You have to put in your own input. But it was a great place to work. And if you have a sense and you're on your wave of working, then this is a great place to work. I know where to go grocery shopping. I know where to buy flour. I know where to get coffee. I know where you work.
Yeah.
I know all these places to get my oil changed. You know, it's like if people know who I am.
Convenient.
Hi, Bruce. How you doing? Oh, good. So it's like I've lived here for 35 years. So I like Davenport. It's fun. It's nice to go outside of it, and I do that occasionally. I've begun to travel again.
Yeah.
And for many, many years, I put it away so that even going up to, say, Chicago was a big ordeal. It's like 3.5 hours. My God. I have to sit in a car.
Yeah.
And now I sit in an airplane for like 8 hours.
Well, where else do you...
Now I'm going to Mexico.
Okay.
I like Mexico. It reminds me of Brazil. My Portuguese that I spoke, I used to think and dream in Portuguese. My Portuguese gets me pretty far in Spain, in Spanish countries. And I love the humanity of the Mexicans. They're very sweet. They're very lovely people. The food is pretty good. The coffee's great. I like Mexico. The colors of the houses are marvelous. I love the old timiness of it too. Yeah.
Wow. So you mentioned etchings. Was that your very first foray into the arts?
No,
Or like what got you doing that?
That's a good question. I was like a regular kid. I was an athlete. I was pretty good in school. I liked to write, And then when I went to college, I went to Notre Dame.
Oh, wow.
I became an English major because I was writing all the time. I would sit on the bus going back, and I would write about what I was seeing and what was happening and what was going through my mind. It was like just came spilling out. And then gradually I started drawing more and more in my notebooks. And then I just kind of flipped into art and English, and I graduated with both art and English. I started drawing. What happened was I had to make a decision between the two. I had to make a decision whether I was going to be a writer or a painter. And I've known a number of artists who've had to make a decision, say, between music and art. And two of them have chosen music, and two of them have chosen art. And I had to choose between the writing and the art, and I chose painting because at that time in my life, I couldn't really paint. I couldn't really write a joyful story. I would be writing when I was kind of like mildly melancholy or depressed or those kind of, anguish things that you go through in college. And so but I could paint a joyful picture. So I went with joy rather than sorrow. And that was, for me, was art rather than writing. I'm still a pretty good writer, but I think of myself more as a painter than a writer. And what happened was in my sophomore year, and I don't know if it was a dream or a kind of a vision, that what occurred was it was like art came up to me clothed in beauty and said, "You, Bruce, kneel down. I dub thee an artist. You are an artist." And I was like, I can't even draw. I don't know anything about it, and I have a little bit of color, but I began the journey, and I learned better how to draw. You don't have to draw fabulous, but you have to be able to sing. And the color, my Brazilian color entered into it, and then I started drawing these poetical things, and then gradually you go through series. What happened to me was that I used to do a lot of body surfing when I was a boy in Brazil. I got pretty good at it. I used to go out with flippers, and you catch a wave, and you ride that wave in for 20 or 30 drawings, or you ride that wave in for a series of essays, or you ride a wave in, you catch a wave, and that's the way I worked. And I'm sorry, I forgot where I was going with that. What were we talking about?
It sounded beautiful. I mean, I was getting lost in your eyes.
Okay.
But, well, I mean, what kind of...
Oh, that's right, how I worked?
Yeah.
What was it? And so I worked in series. I found that I would get on an idea, and I would just, the same image of paper, the same size, the same material, the same media, and I would work on that for a series of pictures. There was something else I was going to talk about then, but I forgot what it was.
Well, if you
Could we play the tapes back? Could we play the tape back?
We probably can.
Okay, that's all right. No, okay.
But, so, I mean, your first real exposure to art was, I mean, so there was no real family influence with that?
Oh, first real exposure. That's a good question. What happened was I went with my father to Europe. I was 11 years old. And we went to, we stayed in Paris, in the same hotel that he had stayed in when he was a student in Paris. And I fell in love with Paris as a young boy. I just loved the city. I loved the smell, I loved the light, I loved the pretty girls, I loved the museums, I loved the food. And we went to all the museums, and I was just a kid. And my father would get excited talking about, "Oh, Bruce, look at this." And I thought to myself, this is a worthy thing, that my father loves it, and he gets so excited that he whispers. And then we went into the Prado and all of them in Spain. And we went to northern Spain, 20 miles from the ocean, Santarem, and we walked down out a mile to this little village. And there in that village were, outside was the cave of Altamira. And these were cave paintings 15, 20, 25,000 years ago. And we went in and I saw them on the ceiling and I was on full record and they were just so astounding. And I noticed that they were all similar looking. And my father thought that they perhaps were done by the same artist. And I thought, this is like the Sistine Chapel, done by the same artist. It's like this just 20,000 years before. And that changed my life. I thought, this is what I'm going to do. This is who I am. This is what I want. And it seemed worthy, and it seemed noble, and it seemed beautiful, and it seemed all those great things. And I've never done art for the money. That always seemed a bit vulgar to me.
Sure.
But I did it for the beauty and the joy and the historical value of it. I just thought it would be marvelous to do. But
Gotcha.
those experiences, those early experiences, well, Camus said, he said, an artist is seeking to recreate those 3 or 4 experiences they had as a child in which their heart first opened. And my heart opened in front of these paintings. And so that's what I did. It could have been if my father had been a banker or a businessman or a car dealer. I mean, my heart could have opened a different way, but that's just what was given for me to do. And so I began this long, sometimes difficult journey, which involves the spirit. And if you want to really improve your art, you have to improve yourself first. That this is where your art comes from, and this is your art flows through you, and this was what I felt. I was how I work. I think of it as like 3 concentric circles going in. The outermost is the physical world, the water and the table and the coat and the air, and then the next world in is the mind and the emotions, invisible but very strong. And then the third world is the world of the spirit, the world that you can't see, from which all the others come through. And that's the world that I really address and aim for and look to express in my work.
Lovely. So I was impressed upon you at such a young age, and yet you still had to choose between writing and the visual arts. So was your heart open to any type of writing that made that decision so difficult, or was there anything along that path?
Actually, interestingly enough, it was jazz.
Oh.
That was the other great tributary into my life. I have always done radio, and when I was in college, I did radio for 4 years, and I did a daytime shift, but I did midnight FM jazz radio. Hi, everybody. Good to see you again.
That sounds...
And it was great. And the station had all of these records that would be coming in, and very early I learned about Coltrane and Miles and Charlie
what year
Parker.
was that?
This was in the late 60s.
Okay.
I even had a friend who when John Coltrane died, just burst out crying. It was like, wow. But that was, and the freedom and the expression and the improvisation and the beauty and the joy of jazz. There was a story about John Coltrane. The United States Information Agency used to send musicians abroad. Dave Brubeck, Ella Fitzgerald, jazz. It was like Coca-Cola. And Coltrane, the greatest saxophone player in the world, was sent to Russia. And the Russians met him at the gate and they said, no, you can't come in. It was like, this is the best saxophone player. What are you doing? They said, we know that. But the freedom with which you play will influence our people. So we don't want you to come into our country. And I thought, how very interesting that the example of his height and his beauty and his freedom would change the mind and the thinking of a whole populace,
Wow.
especially the people who would go.
Sure.
So that was a big thing. I did the usual reading. I read Hermann Hesse, and I read Siddhartha, and I read On the Road 3 times, and that led to my summers of hitchhiking. In my sophomore, junior, senior year of high school, and through most of my years of college, I would take 2 weeks, 3 weeks off, and I would hitchhike both coasts of the United States.
Which one did you like more?
I liked the East Coast because it was picturesque and lovely, and I had many friends there, and it was older. And I liked the West Coast because it was 2 stories and freer and more beautiful in a way. It was a different kind of beauty. I liked them all. It's hard to tell which coast you like.
Mm-hmm.
The East Coast is crowded and people are somewhat protected. The West Coast is more open.
Mm-hmm.
The Midwest, though, is actually the most beautiful. Jack Kerouac said that the prettiest girls were in Iowa. And I thought, how cool is that?
That is pretty cool if it
It
was
is pretty
true.
cool. It is true. Yeah. And I learned a lot hitchhiking. I met interesting people. I would interview them. I didn't even know I was doing that. I had marvelous inspirations, and older people with wisdom would tell me things that I needed to know, and I would kind of lock them in.
I see.
One of them was this guy. We all the way through Pennsylvania, Ohio, into Indiana, and he said, "Son," he said, "I do 2 things really well. I sell plastic garbage cans to all these department stores. I make a nice living, and I have a really good garden." And my family, of course. But he said, all you got to do is pour yourself into 1 or maybe 2 things, and you'll be fine. But if you do more than that, you're going to be spread too thin, master of none.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, why is he telling me this, and how come I'm listening to it now, and maybe this is something that I absolutely have to know. So I just clicked it in. And so I limited myself to just a few mediums, just a few, just painting. I didn't do sculpture and ceramics.
Mm-hmm.
I just concentrated, poured everything I knew into that. And I was always suspect of people who were able to do many different mediums, many different things. It's like, how do you have time for all that? And don't you get any good in one thing? It's like, that was...
So were you mostly, would you say, self-taught, or did you have any kind of mentor figures?
The mentors, I had a number of good teachers. Half of what you learn in grad school, you learn from the other kids, the other guys. I had some absolute masters as teachers, and it's really sad sometimes when people go, "Oh, I've really had no good teachers." It's like, oh gosh, that's really too bad.
Yeah.
I had a Lazansky in Iowa City who was just fabulous, and he had these laser beam eyes, and he could just read you better than you knew yourself. And he wouldn't teach you by saying, well, you should use more black or yellow, or he would tell you stories. And he would you could tell he was like adjusting little valves and buttons inside of you, and you were ruined for the rest of the day after you had a critique with him. So I would just go home and write down everything I could remember. And in 3 years I saw him maybe 12 times. But that was it. That's what I went there for. And he really was a big effect. But teachers come to you, all the time. You have somebody who can teach you something that you didn't know, or the song will come on the air. I feel that reality. I feel that God is like teaching me all the time. I feel that you asking me to come here, it's like, you bet, I'll do it. There's something that I can learn in being interviewed, because I haven't been interviewed in 5 or 6, 10 years. It's been a long time.
Really?
Yeah, I know, it's been a long time. And I thought, boom, but things are happening. It's like, you come up against something that you have to deal with, that you have to overcome, that you have to address. And why else would it be coming to you unless you were being taught something?
I see.
So there's always that element of learning going on, and I think you have to be open for that. If you're not open for learning new things or new experiences, then I think you're going to die.
I see. Do you feel you've had an equal amount of challenges, so to speak, throughout? Like, has it like lightened up at all?
Oh no, it's always a challenge. I mean, you go through a kind of little periods like that, but you'll always be having something new. And if you're not, then just wait a bit. It'll come. I mean, everyone is fighting some sort of battle. Everyone is fighting something. I have a theory that within the circle of a person, that there's like 10% that they have to deal with. There's some problem. Even example, I was in Mexico and I saw this street sweeper with these long brooms made out of natural fiber, and he was singing a song, sweeping the streets. And then later when we flew into Chicago, I remembered him, and then I remembered Chicago, and I thought, oh, the last two governors of Illinois are both in jail. So, it's a kind of a relative thing. I think you're always learning. My analogy for that, everything is symbolic for me, is the shark. That the shark has no way of breathing in its gills. It doesn't have any flippers, and so it always has to be moving. And if it's not moving, it can't breathe. It can't survive. It must sleep in some current, so that it. And the same thing with us. If we're not learning new things, if we're not absorbing new knowledge, if we're not being taught something, if we're not out there really kind of eating up the world, then I think you'll die, just like the shark will, if it doesn't keep going.
Sure. Now, you've taken your art, you've been all over, coast to coast, doing art. Do you feel there's any inherent, or rather innate, difference among the scenes that are within the United States?
Oh yeah, every place is different. It used to be that New York and maybe a little bit on the West Coast, but not really, were the major scenes for art. That New York and maybe a little bit of Europe someplace, but New York was really it. And then I remember when I was a boy that there was a great actor who moved to Minneapolis, and he set up an acting school in Minneapolis, and he was like moving out of New York. And then I thought, here it begins. And then people can live anywhere and still be great artists. I think that here in the Quad Cities, there are numerous fabulous artists. I think as good as any artist that I've ever met anywhere, and they're unencumbered by all of the frustrations or agendas of the coast.
Sure.
The East Coast is hard and it's tough, and people are not friendly, and their work, I think, reflects that. And the West Coast is that I went to a number of galleries in San Diego and Los Angeles, and the art was terrible. It was weak. It was there was no juice to it. There was no flavor to it. It was just
soulless.
Soulless, yes. It was decorative.
Okay.
And commerce has replaced a lot of the judgment of art. It's like, well, this art is good because it's sold for $20,000, or this art is good because it's in different museums. But every curator I've ever talked to in museums had said to a person, they've said, we're lucky if a third of what we buy will be any good in 50 years. So you don't know. You never know. Anyway, I want to be the kind of work that's really good after 50 years.
Of course.
I want to roll through that.
Be immortal.
That level. Yeah, I do. That's part of the deal.
I got you. So, I mean, you've been here for the past
35, almost 40 years.
So you've seen the scene.
Here?
Grow and lull, and like, how do you?
The Quad Cities is it's kind of a tough place. Les Bell, a wonderful artist, wrote a couple of years ago in the Reader that there are 30, 35 galleries in New York City beginning with the letter A. And here there are maybe two, maybe one or two, maybe three. You know, galleries. It's a difficult place to sell work, and I think an artist is not going to make their living selling work here in the Quad Cities. It's too bad. The Quad Cities is a really good theater town. There are 19 different theater groups in the Quad Cities. It's like, that's fabulous. Gosh, I think it's coming along. I think it'll be fine. I like to support everybody who's going, but I think people are hesitant to buy art. I mean, it's like 2% of the market buys art, 2% of the population. We have what, 500,000 people in within
Just
20
under 400K.
Okay, yeah. So 2% of that would be 800 people, 8,000 people, 8,000 people. So out of those people, they might not have a house to buy art for. They might be too poor. They might go to Chicago. They might, buy art from some other place. But it'll change in time. It's just what it is.
Do you see anything in the immediate future for the scene? Like, do you feel you have a good eye for maybe not necessarily predicting what's going to happen, but any particular
good question.
vision for it?
Yeah, the advent of the Figgy is bound to change the downtown and the nature of that. There have been lots of towns who were destitute and mining moved out or factories moved out, and they've turned them into galleries and shops and restaurants and groovy little places. And I think the Quad Cities will do that too. I think, the creative class, the people that are coming in. So the Bucktown, the Figgy, and the apartments downtown. I think it'll be fine. I really have I'm not that kind of person who knows that kind of community development. There are other people who are much better at it. I just kind of sit and think and draw a little bit and talk to people. I like talking to people.
I like talking to people too, and I want to talk to you more. We're going to do a little short break now, though. So
Sounds
people can
good.
go ahead and...
Okay.
We're going to take a little 5 to 6 or 7 minute little intermission here so that you can go to the bar, smoke a cigarette, go to the bathroom, whatever you need to do. We'll be right back with Bruce Carter after this.
Good. What are we going to do next hour?
The jetpack on Billy's back powers his lunar crawler, runs the space mobile, drives the moon tractor.
Operated controls, you can make Garlu go. Stop, Ben.
Feeling good?
Pick
I'm
up.
feeling good. Yeah, I'm fine. My energy is still good too. The one thing I really hate is when I start losing energy and it's like, oh my God, I'm down to 3 propellers now. It's like, oh no.
3 out of how many?
3 out of 4, or 2. It's like, and so it's like I always make sure I have enough protein. Otherwise, I hate. It's happened maybe half a dozen times in my life. It's like I'm out of gas. It's almost like I'm a fighter clinching, in the later rounds. I don't like it. So I'm trying to do it.
We'll get there together.
What?
We'll get there together.
Well,
All right. I do believe we are back, everybody. How'd you enjoy your break? You have a good break? Yes. Have a good smoke? Good bathroom time? Yes? Both of them. All right, good. And we are back here with the lovely Bruce Carter. He enjoyed his break. He sat here the whole time. I assume he was okay? Yeah.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm not used to being seen by so many people when I'm.
We could have put up a curtain for you.
Or I could put sunglasses on.
I like that idea too.
Yeah, that would be
I like
fun.
eye contact though.
I do too.
not
Yeah,
fun.
I do too.
Do you run into that issue at all with when you do your show, Art Talks?
No, I'm in a room, just the two of us at a table, flat microphone, sound guys behind the guest, and it's just the two of us in a room. And then you begin.
Now that show, it's been running for
A little over 20 years.
20 years. I'm 23.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, you were 3 years old then?
Yeah, I was 3 years old when I got started. Wow. How did that come about? So, I mean, you had a background doing radio in college,
I did.
doing the jazz, and
When I got here to town, I heard this little 100-watt station over at St. Ambrose, KALA, and I went up there and I asked for a shift, and they gave me one.
just like that.
Just like that. Well, I mean, I had some
Well, you had
experience in
background, yeah.
college, yeah. And so I did like a 4-hour shift once or twice a week. It was great because all the new jazz records coming out. You're right on top of the new music. It was wonderful. And then outside of Les Mekong, I saw Coleman Harris, who's a wonderful piano player, jazz piano player, and he's also a counselor over at Blackhawk. And, hey, Coleman, how are you doing? And he said, well, he's released his first album. And I thought, well, I said, I've got a jazz show. Why don't you come up and we'll play it and we'll talk about your new album. So we did. And we had a great time. And it got really cool. And I thought to myself, I really like this. So I started asking my artist friends to come up once a week, and I started interviewing them. And then gradually I got my theme song, and I started taping the shows, and I got schedules, and I started looking ahead, and I did that for 2 years up there at 100 watts. You know, you can barely hear it beyond the river, but it was sweet. So then I went and I went over to WVIK, and I pitched Don Wooten on the show. I said, I've got this little show, I'm interviewing artists, you're NPR. What do you think? And he listened to my tapes and said, nope, not good enough. I thought, oh man. So then I did it for a little more, and then I kind of like cleaned it up a bit, and I gave him another tape, and he said, okay. So I went on, live on like Wednesday.
Live show.
Live show, Wednesday evenings. It was great, live show. That nice little on the edge of the diving board, you know, on the edge of the surfboard. And started calling up different artists, calling up different people I knew. 70,000 watts, 60 miles. It was great. And they even paid me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Do you get paid for this?
No. All I get a drink.
Okay. Do they give you like food or anything?
I think just a
Sandwich?
drink.
Just a drink?
Just a drink.
Okay.
I might have to renegotiate my contract.
Oh, yeah.
I got
Anyway.
a terrible lawyer.
Terrible lawyer, prenup, and so then it just developed, and I was doing it by myself, and then they changed the studios, and I was unable to do all the buttons and do it myself. So Dave, the sound guy, Dave Garner, came on, and he engineers the show now. He filters and squishes the sound, and he extends it, and he can clip out little words or little breaths or something like that. It's just incredible what they can do. It's like he can collage sound, and now that's where the situation is.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So during all that time, have you had traveling artists, I imagine, on the show?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, 'cause you do a variety also. You don't just do visual artists. I mean,
Well,
you do.
I feel more confident with art with painters, because you can look
talk
at
shop.
You talk shop, and you can look at their work pretty quickly, like in 20 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes. A writer, you have to actually read their work. It takes time.
What a hassle.
Yeah. Poets are not so bad because you can go through it pretty fast, and then they can explain it. Writers are good to have on the air because they can read their work for 5 minutes, and 5 minutes of the show is gone.
Yeah.
And then you can talk about it. But painters are my favorite. I've had tattoo artists on. I've had chefs art historians, museum people, visiting artists, sculptors, all kinds of art, food artists, sugar artists, people who make cakes. It kind of breaks down into the same patterns, though. The pattern is that you have an idea, and you have a process, and you have to have good ideas, and you have to have a good way of doing it. And if your process gets good, chances are you'll be pretty good. Some people can develop a process on their own. Other people have to have them taught. Many people have good mentors, and everybody has a studio that they have. Where do you get ideas? How do you work? All those are, regular questions. You have someone who's good in multiple things, someone who's good in just a few things. I'm not so good with musicians. Musicians, I don't know what a D minor seventh chord is, or what a diminished fifth is. If that
I have no
is.
idea either.
Yeah.
Sounds fascinating, though.
I know. I have no idea. It's like, okay, fine. But I can talk about creativity, and I can talk about the act of creating, and that for me is the meat of it. And it's interesting getting to know people and finding out what they're about. I love finding people's stories. I love finding, where their soul is, where their spirit comes from, what moves them, how they develop, what leaps or jumps they make. I love that aspect of
Have you found like a more common thread
among
all those?
the really great artists are not afraid. The really great artists can take chances. The really good ones are brave. I think that's it. You can be okay, you can be good, but I think if you really have confidence and you really, sometimes what happens is that you get to another level and you grow into that level. Do you know what I mean? For instance, if you were suddenly asked to host, say, a Conan O'Brien show, if you were gone, you'd be good. You would very quickly rise
Would
to
you
that
only hope?
level. Yeah, no, you would. That's happened a number of times in my life where I've been placed in a situation that I had to rise to.
Do you recall your earliest one?
My earliest situation? Well, that was when I was at Marycrest.
Okay.
I was chairman of the art department, and I hadn't really done any formal teaching ever in my life. And suddenly I'm thrust into 4 classes and running a department and hiring people, and it was like, what happens is you kind of almost pretend to do it, and then after a while you do it. And after a while, this is what you do, and you can go, yeah, I can do this. It's an interesting thing. It's like being a parent sometime. You're not a parent. You don't have any children, right?
No.
Yeah. Well, when you do have children, you go, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah.
Change the diaper?
Figure it out.
Yeah, it's like, well, how do you work this? And after a while, you got it. It's just the same kind of thing with anything. Sometimes I think it's good to be thrust into a position. Some people are very good at thrusting themselves into a position, and others have to be kind of invited. I'm
Sure.
kind of an invited person. I like being invited.
What would you say is your most recent challenge that you had to rise to?
Really recent challenge was to get back to work again. I spent about 6 months not doing any work at all. And that was really hard because it's part of your identity, but I didn't know what to draw, and I didn't know what medium to use, and I just really didn't know
What brought that on?
what to do. You just kind of reach the end of the wave. The wave comes in, it deposits you on the shore, and you kind of get a cup of coffee and you kind of paddle back out into the ocean, and you're kind of waiting for a wave. That's the way I operate. And there were no waves coming in, and I I thought, well, maybe I should generate my own wave.
Mm-hmm.
No, it didn't work, and I just had to wait. I sometimes describe it as waiting for the water to fill up behind the dam. You're kind of getting your
Yeah.
juice back again.
I can definitely relate to that, but sometimes, I mean, did you ever have a moment of, oh, maybe it's not going to come back?
Yes, I have. There have been several times in my life where I've doubted. I had to give up my art again. I had to okay, if you want me to be doing this, then you show me what to do, and you make it very clear, because I need that clarity. It's like, okay, what do you want me to do? Where do I go? What medium do I go in?
So, what was the longest gap you had of that, would you say?
3 times in my life, I haven't done work for like a period of a year and a half.
That'd be terrifying.
It would be terrifying.
Yeah.
And I just get kind of pulled back into it again.
Mm-hmm.
But the time is not wasted, I've found, because you grow in life experiences.
Sure.
And
To
that,
draw inspiration from later.
correct, and that will just flow back in. So I've thought, well, this is what I should be doing. I should be doing this other thing. Have you ever seen a labyrinth in medieval churches in Europe? And there are some churches here in town that have it, but a labyrinth, and what it is this round, and you walk in toward the center. You want to get toward that center. You walk in and you go toward it, and then the labyrinth goes around, and then way away.
You see David Bowie.
And then you come back. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then eventually you get to the center of the labyrinth, and it's the same thing. I think you want to be doing something, but you're being pulled in other life experiences, which, again, you're being taught is essential for you, and those, and then eventually you'll get there. So I just kind of wait, and then so I recently started working again, black and white, and it takes you a little bit to kind of get the arm back, kind of, you have got to throw.
Shake the rust off.
Yeah, exactly, and then you're on. And a number of people have been saying, this black and white is nice, but you should get back into color. It's like, oh, you're right. You're right, color. Color and I are really good friends. I love color. I feel completely at home with color. It's like I don't have to think about color theory or what goes. There's just something inside of me that goes pink, or oh, it needs blue, or I need to do that. I like color a lot. I love black and white a lot too. So the two of them are my ball games.
I see.
I like, baseball, football. Which do you like better? It's like, wow, they're both great games. So that's what I do. And they're both vehicles for you to express something. I'm not trying to express myself so much. I'm not trying to say, oh, I suffer, or this is mankind crying out in anguish. I'm not doing that. I'm trying to express something that passes through me. For instance, this plant here, this leaf is not expressing the plant. This is the water coming up through the plant, and that water coming up through the plant is my art. And then it comes out a leaf. It comes out as a drawing. That's how I think of it. Like, where do you get your ideas from? How do you know what to say?
Oh, it varies.
Really?
I mean, I can't really force myself to write. It usually takes a wave, like you said. I need something to happen in order for me to generate any kind of
Response?
yeah, which can be quite frustrating at times, especially if nothing happens. Well, that's
Yeah.
why you just got to get out there more, I guess
Yeah.
you say. What would you say is your most? Would you say you had or are having a more prolific time in terms of your art? Like, was there a period where it just like nonstop, just can't put it down fast enough?
Sure. When there are different times when that occurs. It kind of reminds me of the question: is your older work better than your younger work? In other words, when you were starting off and you were full of energy and you were working till 2 o'clock in the morning, which I can't do anymore. Were you making better work than you are now? And I'm working less. I'm turning out fewer pieces. I feel they're good pieces. And the answer to that is kind of like a musician. When you're younger, you play lots of notes, but when you're older, then what happens is you get nuanced. There's space between notes.
More deliberate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a thing like that, and I think the work is just as good. I like my work. I like it. I prefer some more than others, but I like looking. I feel like I'm informed by it. I feel like my work is telling me something about what I'm thinking. It's like my work is saying, this is what you're really worrying about and thinking about and dealing with. I kind of interpret my own work after I make it. I become the viewer of it rather than the maker of it. It's like listening to your show. Do you ever listen to these things that you're doing?
I can't stand my own voice, so no.
No, your voice is fine. Your voice is fine.
Yeah.
I feel the same way too. I kind of like, oh, my voice. But it just.
I really?
Yeah, really.
I mean, when anybody mentions Bruce Carter, it's usually just about how, and I can only describe by doing this motion. It's just sweet air.
Sweet. Oh, I like that. Thanks.
You can keep it.
Thanks. Okay, that's good. I'll quote you on that.
Okay. Now with your, we diverged a little bit out there, but with the talk show that you've been doing now for these many years, did you have any was there any guest where you're like, oh, like I don't know what I'm going to do with this one, or like anyone that you were just so nervous about because of their work, intimidated almost?
Yes, for both of them.
Okay.
They're early on when I didn't filter them maybe more completely. I didn't quite know how to what hoops they had to go through or what to do. There were some guests. It's like, so why do you like watercolor? Well, I just kind of like it. It's like, oh no, this is going to be a long show. Play a lot of music, yeah. And then what happened is I have three questions. There are three criteria. What first is, do I like the work? Because if you don't like the work, you don't want to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
The second is, can they talk? Can you express yourself? And the third is a little certain something that you just kind of go, maybe not,
Sure.
or maybe.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what I mean? Kind of maybe later, you know. And,
Yeah.
And you just have to kind of wait for it. For instance, there are people that come in and they go, "Hi, here's my work. What do you think?" I go, "Deal, great, love it." And other people I've got to like pursue.
Mm-hmm.
I've had two people go, "No, never, forget it, never."
Really?
It's like, yeah, exactly my
Were they shy
reaction.
about it, or?
Perhaps they're hesitant to reveal who they
Okay.
are, and that is a difficult thing because sometimes I'll be probing, I'll be asking, and then there's like a door. It's like, no, you can't come in that door. So
You're
I'll
like,
go
but I
around.
want in that door.
I'll go around by the back door, or I'll go in the window, and they'll stop me again. It's like, okay, well, that's kind of a personal question. It's like, well, yeah.
That's the idea.
Yeah, it's the idea. It's like, go ahead. It's just the two of us here. No one else. That's tough when that happens. There have been a few people that I've been a little nervous about interviewing, and because what happens is you're going, oh, I'm a big fan. And if you're a fan of somebody, then you're not really talking to them. You're talking to this image of
Yeah.
them, and you have to get past that image of them, and they actually don't like being talked to by a fan.
Sure.
Oh, I just love your work. It's so wonderful. It's like, oh, leave me alone. So you have to get past that, and if you can, you're fine. It's just you're talking to them as a human being. Hey, how about them bears? Or hot dogs or hamburgers, or who's your favorite Beatle? And I will ask them that before we go on, just as kind of a joking aside, but I
Yeah.
really am very curious about who they choose. For instance, who's your favorite Beatle?
Oh, McCartney.
Really? Okay, see, now I know a lot about you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, no one says Ringo, I don't think.
No. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, no
No.
one does.
You know what Ringo said? He said Paul got all the girls, John got all the intellectuals, George got all the mystics, and Ringo, he said, I got all the mothers. So, oh, Ringo, you're so cute, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Nice. Now, those 3 questions that you developed, I assume you developed them. I don't think you went right into it having those questions.
No, I didn't. No, it's.
So that
it
took
came-
time.
That took time, yeah. Everything takes time,
Sure.
yeah. To develop your own style.
Did you listen to anybody, any kind of interviewers for any kind of inspiration or any
Good-
kind of,
good
just to get an
question,
idea for
yeah.
an approach?
Good question. I looked very thoroughly. I wanted to see what other people were doing with this. And I watched Charlie Rose, and I listened to, you know, late night talk shows. And what I found was the attitude that you're coming at the viewer with. And so I always try to make them feel comfortable. I try to compliment them either on the air or before we begin, because otherwise I wouldn't invite them.
Sure.
And I've learned a few tricks along the way. For instance, if I were interviewing you, I would mimic your body. I would do this. And if you were like this, exactly, I would mimic, because people feel more comfortable talking into a mirror
Sure.
until you get started, and then you don't have to worry about it. Then the party's going, and then you're fine. Little
yeah.
thing, but I will sometimes just kind of, you know, mimic whatever position the guest is in. I didn't find anybody to really copy or emulate, or who was a good prototype for what I was doing. So I had to find it on my own. I had to kind of teach myself. I had to just kind of figure it out. But isn't that true about a lot of things? I mean, just,
Oh, yeah.
for instance, I grew up, it was just my dad and I. My mother and my sister were completely out of the picture. I didn't see my other side of my family for like 11 years. So I grew up, my dad and I. Did you ever see the TV show The Rifleman, you know? It's an older show, the guy and his son. And so I had no idea how to treat girls or how to treat women, and I had to make it up on my own. It's like, how do you treat girls? How do you talk to people?
Yeah.
And I got it from media. I got it from what I read. I got it from what I thought I should do. And then I finally discovered that of just doing what kind of worked, what kind of the way you should be doing it. Do you know what I mean? And what it is it gave me a very interesting insight into the feminine mind, and I feel like I understand women very well, and I understand men very well. It's just an understanding of people. Women are very different.
They sure are.
They sure are. And what happens is that there's kind of like, once you get past the layers, there's kind of an unknown zone back there. And it's like,
And it's
oh.
scary.
No, not really. It's only scary if you make the wrong move. Or if you say the wrong
like
thing.
a sudden move.
Well, maybe for your case, okay. I can't help you. You have to
Yeah.
figure that out
I'm
yourself.
trying.
Okay. Anyway, authenticity. People like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're just going
It's
to
pretty
have
universal.
Yeah, you're just going to have to do that. I think you're doing fine, though. I
Oh.
would not have come here if I didn't think you were good.
Well, it's very sweet of you to say. Thank you. I believe we have time for just one more thing. Is there anything? What's the big thing that you would like to do that you haven't done yet?
I'm at the point in my life where I really don't need anything for Christmas or my birthday, except maybe good coffee and groovy socks. That's it.
Oh my God!
Striped socks. That's it. I've got everything that I need. If I would ask for anything more, it would probably take more energy and time, and more attention to what I have to do. You know, for instance, if I could take this show national, it's like, oh my gosh, do you know how much work that is? You know, it'd just be, so what I would wish for maybe would be a little more ready cash. I think maybe that would help a little bit. But really, you know, I really have, in a kind of surprising realization, I really have pretty much everything I need, and probably you do too. I mean, think about it. You're in America, you're eating, you're well dressed, you know, you've got this cool thing you're doing. You work in a great place, you know, you're on your way up, you've got a good mind, you know, you've got everything. It's like, just keep, my answer to everything is like, just keep marching, just keep going, just keep absorbing, just keep going. Advice to, you know, young comedians. It's like, what do you do? Just keep going.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful. I feel blessed. I feel grateful. You know, my mistakes have not been too damaging. The wrong turns I took have not obliterated me. I've been lucky. I've been watched over. Those are the things I feel. I feel pretty good about that. So the answer is probably, you know, thanks for asking, but really I'm okay.
Well, fantastic. Well, you know, because I got Make-A-Wish out here in the back, and I
Do
just
you?
like, well, I'll send them back though. I mean, you wouldn't need
Okay, no, you're fine.
to- Okay.
You're good. Best of luck to you. I think this is good for you. I think you should be doing this.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I like it. I got a couple of people that come on the regular that also seem to like it, which Christina over there. Well, Bruce, I just want to thank you again for coming out to this.
Pleasure.
As far as the next show, I believe May's dates are all locked down, so we're not going to have a show in May, but we will be having one the following month. So be sure to find us on Facebook to stay up to date on that. Got to find a guest for that still. Other than that, I think we're going to go ahead and sign off the way we usually do with the quote from the Rozz-Talk's manifesto, of which this lovely establishment is named. Folks, if you want better media, go make it. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming out.
That's good. That's good. Nicely done. Nicely done. Let me give you a stone. Let me give you a stone. This is what I give you guys.